It looks like we're gonna operate a little bit today.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking like the Blue Jean operator.
The Blue Jean operator. Shout out to Nick out there.
Impact! Neutralize! 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 Impact! Just short on those two. Neutralize!
Alright, I am going to stop at 650 because I am starting to see Mirage as well, and that last target, I was starting to get a little bit of wave affecting it.
Right on. A pretty good run there, dude. There was one at 450, your first shot. It either didn't move it at all or it was just underneath it. I couldn't tell, but I didn't call it.
Yeah.
And then you hit 1-2 right afterwards.
I mean, suffice to say, though, I mean, if what we've published hasn't really, helped us see this, the Block 2 program...
Man, it's capable, isn't it?
Block 2 program with good ammunition.
So capable.
Yeah.
Good run. Good run. I thought that was good.
Anyways, we will see you guys at the debrief. That was a fun run. We'll see you there. Stay warm.
Now that was a blast to see Henry run, but before we get into our detailed debrief, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Delete Me. We are reminded every day of the number of fake accounts, scammers, and bots who are trying to access our private and personal information. In fact, if you go Google yourself right now, you're likely to find accounts and profiles set up with your private and personal information, including things like your email address, your phone number, photos, addresses, and even pictures of your family members. All of this can lead to things like telemarketing phone calls, harassment, phishing scams, and even identity theft. So consider working with this video's sponsor, Delete Me. Delete Me's team of experts in software scour data broker websites to remove your private and personal information. Not only that, but they will continue to run through this for any new data that gets added to these sites. On average, Delete Me finds and removes over 2,000 pieces of personal and private information for a user in the first 2 years. And all time, Delete Me has removed over 100 million pieces of private and personal information from data broker sites. Now today, Delete Me is offering 20% off for you, a 9-hole viewer. Head over to joindeleteme.com/9hole and use the promo code 9hole to sign up today. With that, let's get back to the show. Welcome back into the debrief. That was the M4 Block 2 on Speedway, and probably, as we would anticipate, a very capable rifle made by a very reputable modern, commercial manufacturer. Cleaned the course without too much issue, Henry. And I mean, did you think anything was going to go differently?
No, no, honestly. And if you were to look back in any of our previous episodes, we've already talked about the SCAR 16, specifically on Speedway. But I think the SCAR 16 and the M4 Block 2 are kind of, I wouldn't call them nemesis per se, but it was kind of the Coke and Pepsi Cola type of scenario. Because when SOCOM were looking at a new rifle, of course the SCAR, the SOCOM, the Special Operations Combat Assault Rifle, when they were looking at adopting that, perhaps, they ended up still sticking with the M4. Why? this is why. Because
Yeah.
it does a lot of the things. And especially, I want to throw back to our friend Jeff Gerwich, who we interviewed in the Block 2 practical accuracy episode, and whom has on his channel a significant amount of knowledge on the SCAR project and the Block 1 and Block 2 project. And specifically, he also talks about operators back when they were phasing the Block 2 in. They needed to clear targets at 600 to 700 meters on the operators' courses. This right here is no doubt. There is no doubt right here that I could clear this course, because I already know from the guys before us that this is what they did as a standard. And this is the thing that held the SCAR 16 from being adopted into service. And this happened 10 years ago. This is a 10-year-old platform. So
I want to draw onto something you said there very specifically. Think about this for a second, because conventional thought, at least as far as I would consider it, like sort of getting involved in firearms, learning about them sort of in the early, or we'll call it mid 2000s, like the 2010 time frame is sort of when you and I sort of started, give or take, but like when we sort of started engaging in shooting and learning about stuff. Was the M4 at that point in time in our minds, and even over the next 10 years, was the M4 itself, sort of the stock M4 with a 14.5-inch barrel, did we ever think of that as like a 600 to 700 yard stroke meter gun?
No, and honestly, it's not just us. You remember all those reports coming out saying, "Oh, the M4 isn't reaching the enemy at Afghanistan distances. The M4 is too short of a weapon." Constantly trying to find faults in the system itself and saying that you have to replace it with something else, which I very much feel that we are stuck right now, feeling that we have to replace the M4 for reasons that we are trying to find. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly an argument around like terminal effectiveness at those ranges, like sure. But I mean, so even when we started this project and we look back at some of our original sort of M4 runs and like original shooting, we were very happy to like be clearing 500 with an M4, going, like we're pushing the limits of what we think we can do with this system. And it's like, no, man, we were pretty far off on what this thing was ultimately capable of doing, with some specific stipulations, ammunition, effective training with the optic, the potentially the free floating of the front end, some of the upgrades and modernization that the Block 2 package included, perhaps, and some of the advents of modern ammunition that came about in the early to mid 2000s, but still. I mean, there's a prevailing thought, I guess, is what I'm getting to, that these ranges are just like crazy talk for 14.5 ARs, and they're just simply put, like we're starting to see it more and more. They're not. They're within the performance envelope.
Back then, though, remember we were also saying the AK is a 200 meter max rifle when we rarely shot 200 meters on the range. Like I remember back then when we first got into 3-gun, we never shot 200 meters with ball ammunition. That's in our minds, that was match ammo territory. It's kind of crazy that I was thinking, the army considers this at 550, the M4A1 being this a 550 max effective range radius rifle with ball ammunition. I remembered that's just because it's for full torso targets, which for a regular soldier who doesn't do this all the time, maybe that is true. But also with ball ammunition. But this is not a regular M4. But still throwing back at it, I think even with a regular M4, we would be able to achieve something like this, especially if we got to run 77s.
So with that said, I mean, one of the things that I would draw immediate, sort of eyes onto with respect to that point, Henry, is the amount of evolution that you see between like the 90s to the early 2000s with the advent of sort of the Block 1, which we've obviously just run on the practical accuracy course fairly recently. We'll give you a link to that video. But then over the next, call it 5, 7, 10 years into the Block 2, over such a short period of time, you see a major overhaul and advent of capability, if you will, within the M4 system, both with the ability to attach force multipliers, as they're called, lights, lasers, suppressors, optics, and the like, and with the advent of the ammunition, and pushing those rifles into a region of capability sort of previously considered ineffective.
There's a lot of growth that came directly out of those comments about the M4 not being able to perform at longer distances. And this is specifically using the Mark 12's Mark 262 ammunition is one of them. SF ubiquitously started to use a lot of Mark 262 77 grain Sierra Match King munitions, which I believe the mod. So the mod 0 and mod 1 are both 77 grains. It's just with or without a cannelure. And especially on unarmored targets at longer distances, as Jeff talks about, the M4 Block 2 is capable, and they regularly train at 600-700 meters and beyond with the M4 Block 2. Now, I have no experience in seeing what it does to a flesh target at those distances, but the target had a fair amount of flex to it, even when it hit on our course.
Oh, yeah.
Which leads me to think that even at those distances, you definitely don't want to be standing downrange from any type of projectile, especially something like that. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk really quickly then, Henry, about sort of the setup of this particular firearm and some of the pros and cons. So one of the things straight away is the front sight post being extended through the rail. The pro, you could modernize an existing front sight post carbine length gas system gun without having to rebarrel it, new gas system, or anything of the sort. You take what was in the armory, put on the new rail system, and you're effectively good to go. But you are left with that front sight post sticking up through the rail. Now, talk us through two pieces. Does it affect you in terms of looking through the ACOG? Are you seeing the front sight post, and does it bother you while you're shooting? And then the second piece being, talk about the Mirage.
That is there as it's sort of turned into a vestigial item on the M4 Block 2 as it phased on, and you could sort of pick the older Block 2s out because you could see the front sight post sticking through the top. As far as it getting in the way of optics, as it's like ACOGs or LCANs, which we did shoot it with an ACOG. We don't have an LCAN on hand, unfortunately, but both the ACOG and LCAN that we have are cammed for 62 grains and not 77 grains. That in a bit. You could see the front sight post, yes, but anyone who's worked with these for a while knows that, yeah, the front sight post is there, but after a while you see it, but you don't see it. It sort of disappears in the background of your sight picture. I think what potentially affected it more was the and this is a potential. You remember I was complaining about the Mirage on range? I'm wondering if there's a little bit more Mirage coming through because of the exposed front sight block. Now, it's not nearly as severe as, let's say, if you had an exposed can, like an AEM-5 on the very front, like the Mark 12. That was a lot more severe. There's different variations. There's different levels of severity with Mirage. And with a low severity like this, you sort of, when you're looking through the scope, and you see a Mirage, sometimes there's like a break in the Mirage that you could get a moment of clarity, like if you were a drinker. So cheers. And you booze a lot. There is a moment of clarity in your phase of being drunk. And sort of this is kind of like that. You're kind of like, oh, you're bobbling all over the place, and then all of a sudden it clears out for just a second. And then that's the moment for you to take a shot. Now, typically this wouldn't be an issue for, let's say, a non-time course, like when we were doing the barrel test for the M4. That wasn't an issue because we had a little bit of a breeze. It kept on clearing some of the Mirage out, and it wasn't that bad of a Mirage to begin with. But you need to wait for that moment of clarity to come by when you're talking about a low level of Mirage like that. Yeah. When you're on a timed course, or if you have to respond to contact and you don't have the initiative on it, that is not a luxury that you possess. The time is not a friend of you at that point. And so that may be a detracting factor, that the gas block could heat up, and in the front it could be pluming some Mirage that could affect you on your side picture. So that's something that we discovered during this run. Yeah, and to that point, potentially exacerbated by the addition of a suppressor, right? Because the suppressor, even though we have this one wrapped, right? That's something that a lot of people were asking us to do, was to wrap the can to help alleviate some of the Mirage. Okay, got it. I usually shoot with wraps anyway, so we have mine on hand, so we threw it on there, and great, except exposed gas block and suppress, so probably heating the gas block a little bit faster than usual, so Henry still has to talk about Mirage. With that said, let's also talk about gassing with the suppressor, Henry. I mean, I've got to emphasize, it's not that bad. Like, did I see Mirage? Yes. Was I able to work through it? Also, yes. It's just, it's not as nice it's not as kind to you on the timed course. That's it. Sure. So talk us through then gassing coming back, because I know you obviously, we add a suppressor. It's a carbine length system. You're going to get gas back in the face. You tend to shoot on the precision side of the house without iPro, which I know it really bothers some people in the comments, but everybody is an adult. They can choose whether or not they're going to wear the iPro. And I know Henry, much like some other professional long-range shooters, have told me they prefer to not, because they appreciate being able to see directly into the optic, and it's a trade-off, right? Like there is an element of risk, but fine. You are doing it in this instance, and you're getting gas back in the face. Are you noticing it? Was it bad? Because I don't think this has a gas buster in it. No, the M4 is fine. Also, that was a K can, wasn't it? Mm-hmm, it was. Yeah, so it's not nearly as bad as like a full-size can on a shorty. So shorty being like a Mark 18 length barrel, like a 10.5 barrel with an enlarged gas port with a larger can on it, that's going to be infinitely worse, because you've got more gas volume trapped, a larger gas port pushing backwards. Another one that actually gasses more than this is a Gordon carbine without the gas buster. Because you'll see the AEM5 being a larger volume can, very quiet, but at the same time you get more gases with that. But even shooting that, like I don't have that big of an issue shooting it, as long as the ammunition's clean, you don't get little bits and chunks flying back, you're fine. Yeah. I mean, it's not. Let me put it this way: not wearing iPro definitely has its pros and cons. Can you see better? Yes. But you said the con is that gunk could get back into your eye, or if you run into a catastrophic moment, you don't have that layer of protection. So, is it something that I prefer to do as a dad, to maybe like destroy my body so I would run into adverse issues down the road? No, it is not. That is not a preference. If you have a choice, absolutely, wear your iPro if you can. But in order for me to get better vision on the subjects that we're shooting, this was a trade-off in order to get better vision and being able to acquire the targets better. Now, if the gas is bad enough, maybe that is a trade-off to wear iPro and shield some of that gas, because your vision is going to be blurred by gassing anyways. So that's also it's for the audience that could make their own decision, rather
exactly.
than needing the internet to tell them what to do, I suppose.
Yep. So look, I think that we've covered all of like the generally relevant topics here. I would say that I think that this particular rifle, even though it's probably quote unquote dated now by modern standards, right? Most modern ARs that you see, they don't have a front sight post. They're usually running M-LOK rails nowadays, as opposed to the quad rails, the beefier quad rails. So it is by those standards like relatively dated, quote unquote. But it's probably a rifle that you could sit down and you could be shooting that, and I could be shooting the URGI, and they would feel like relatively similar in most cadences of performance and capability and everything else. Like maybe the weight is going to be a bit different, maybe a little bit of the I don't know if you'd even call it like the durability, but the Block 2 definitely feels just like chunkier, beefier, probably because of the weight. But I mean, it seems like it still fits. It still fits in. It's not so far removed that it doesn't any longer fit into the sort of the category of what we envision when we think of modern AR.
Well, honestly, the entire line of M4s is like that, isn't it? Like
I think to a degree.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be like you can't put a maul on like a Gordon carbine. Got it.
Yeah.
But the way SF has really developed out the M4 carbine, every turn of the way they have added more capability, shaved more weight off of it, given it more durability, let the system run cleaner, better, faster. Every iteration of the M4 has been so much better than the last one, infinitely better than the last one. But at the same time, the last one is still relevant today. So when people look back at it and they're like, "Oh well, the M4 is overpowered. The M4 is just ridiculous. It's just no contest." Yeah, you're right. The fact that you have a system that has that type of modularity and is able to be pulled apart and have this depth of commercial components to re-outfit and re-modernize and update the system, there is no other platform out there that could. Literally, SOCOM tried to pull in the SCAR 16, a new platform tailor designed for what SOCOM wanted, and they didn't want it. And that should speak volumes of what the M4 Block 1, Block 2, and shall I say, the fabled Block 3 has in store for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, with that, if you're still with us, we really appreciate it. Do all that good YouTube stuff. Like, comment, subscribe, make sure the notifications are on. Check us out on 9H Podcasts as well as the channel over on Rumble, and if you're so inclined, on Utreon or Patreon as well. And until next time, we'll see you on the range.
This is Steel 96, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green. How copy, over?
Steel 96, this is 716, roger, over. 1-6, Steel 91, 1 pack, green, over. This is 716, roger, over.
1-6, Steel 92, 1 Victor, 2 packs, Redcon 1, over.